Okay, so the elif statement or clause, I guess, is the third possibility, and it's used to give us another option. So far we've seen if and else, so it's either or, but there might be more things that are possible, right? So we've got to take account of those things. So it's short for else if. So elif stats is short for else if. So we have if condition 1 is true, then we would execute those statements. If it's not true, but another condition, if condition 2 is true, then we could execute these statements. So there's a bunch of statements here that would be executed if condition 1 is false and condition 1 is true. Okay, and that's the elif statement or elif clause. Again, like the else, it must accompany an if. So you can't have an elif on its own. It has to come after an if. So we have if, some statements, elif, and then some more statements. So we can do our calculator using this elif. That's what it looks like. So if operation equals plus, then we do this combination. Elif the operation equals minus, then we subtract them. So if it's plus, we add them, minus, we subtract them. There is a problem with that, of course, if the user types something other than plus or minus. Okay, so if the user types something other than plus or minus, this combination isn't calculated. Let me just show you the whole code for that. So here's the whole code. The combination is only calculated if the user types in plus or minus. If the user doesn't type either of those things, we can test that. 5 and 2, and if we type in a star, the combination isn't calculated. So when in this line here, where Python is trying to print out the combination, it's not defined, hasn't been calculated or created, so we get an error. Okay, so although this is quite a good version of the code, it's still problematic if the user does something you're not expecting, if they do something they're not told to do. Okay, but this elif is really a very useful thing because it can be used over and over again. So, for example, it doesn't have to be just two conditions like we saw just now. It can be condition 1 and condition 2 and condition 3 and condition 4. And you'll see in each case, if condition 1 is true, then we do these ones. If condition 2 is true, we do these ones. If neither of those things are true, but condition 3 is true, we do these ones. And then this bit at the bottom here, if neither 1, 2, or 3 are true, but 4 is true, then we do these statements. So we'll only ever do one of these blocks of code, one of these set of statements, the indented set, but depending on which conditions are true, determines which block we'll do. So there's the elif, and there's another elif, and there's another one, and you can have, well, you can have as many as you want, really. Could be plenty more. Just starts to get hard to read if you have too many. So now we've got that, actually, we can do the calculator to do multiplication and division as well. So here it is, and it's nice, as you can see, it's kind of easy to read. I find it easy to read anyway. If the operation is plus, then we add them together. If the operation is minus, then we subtract them. If it's times, if it's not either plus or minus, but if this condition is true, if the operation is times, then we multiply them, and if none of those things are true, if it's divide, then we divide them. Okay, so there's 4 operations there possible in this bit of code, in this example, but we're still going to run into problems if the user doesn't type in it doesn't type in any of these symbols. Okay, so we will still get an error if the operation is not recognized. And so what we need is a way to identify any other input and give the user a more helpful error message. And that's actually easy by putting an else after all those elif statements. Okay, so here's the most general combination of conditionals. So we have if, elif, and else. So you put all 3 things together, you can see if condition 1, do these statements. If condition 1 is not true, but condition 2 is true, do these statements. If neither condition 1 nor 2 are true, but condition 3 is true, then do these statements. And you can have as many of those things as you want, as many elifs as you want. And then at the bottom, if none of those conditions are true, then we can do these statements. Okay, the ones at the bottom. So there's the if, there's an elif, there's an elif, and there could be lots more, and there's the else statement to finish. And this is the most typical way of using these things. You can you'll find this in lots and lots of programs just like this. There may only be one elif, there may be several, but usually you have an else to catch all the other possibilities. Okay, and that means when the user types in something we don't recognize, we can actually give them an error message. Okay, so this version 5, if they put in plus minus asterisk for times and slash for divide, then it'll do the calculation they want. Anything else, whatever they put in, it prints out the word error with ... and then it actually prints out the symbol they've typed in quote marks, in single quote marks, and says it's unrecognized. Let's just run that one. So that's example 5, isn't it? Okay, there's the code. If I run it, normally, so 2, let's divide them. 2 divided by 2 should give us 1.0. That works fine. But if I, let's run it again. If I put something in 2 and 2 and I say add, okay, it doesn't know what add means. And so it says error, add unrecognized. And so that's a much nicer way of presenting an error to the user, because rather than that chunk of red code, that chunk of red error messages we saw on the previous slide. Where is it? There. This traceback. Whenever Python does something it can't handle, then you get this traceback. That's really, you don't want to give that sort of output to the user. It's much nicer to give them a helpful error message which says something like, you'll see at the bottom here, error X unrecognized. Okay, and one other thing to note while I'm just going to finish this topic off. As I said, all these statements after the if, elif, and else are indented. And Python, I've mentioned this before, Python is very fussy about indentation. It's most other programming languages are not. So most languages, Java, JavaScript, C, all the variants of C, C++, C#, they all use curly braces instead to tell you what happens after if and elif and else. Okay, so in Python, it saves some of these curly braces and saves a bit of extra syntax, but everything must be indented, and it all must be indented the same amount. So if you tried it to do this, okay, so here you can see there's if the operation is plus and there's a print statement, and then it does the addition, you'd get an error because it doesn't understand the indentation there. It's got to match these two statements. Either they're being done because they're part of this conditional, so they're being used when that condition is true, in which case they've got to be indented, or maybe you want one of them to be done regardless of whether it's true, in which case it's not indented. Okay, provided it's consistent, you can use as many spaces as you like, but we'll see later on. The editors will usually help you with this. So the idle or PyCharm will help you do the indentation correctly. All the examples in this course use 4 spaces, and idle inserts this automatically for you. Okay, so that example there would work. It would work absolutely fine. It's only 1 space, but it's not consistent with other examples. So try and be consistent and let idle or PyCharm help you. Okay, I'm going to finish that exercise, that video there, and then we'll get on to look at some more examples.